In a bold move that underscores widening transatlantic rifts, UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has openly challenged former US President Donald Trump's stance on European security, calling for a stronger European European-led peacekeeping force in Ukraine. His insistence on a US backstop, a security guarantee to deter Russian aggression, directly contradicts Trump's long-standing position that Europe should bear a greater share of its own defense burden. Starmer's defiant posture was made clear following an emergency summit in Paris, where European leaders and NATO officials gathered to hash out a collective response to the war in Ukraine. The summit, convened by French President Emmanuel Macron, comes amid growing unease over Washington's decision to engage in bilateral negotiations with Moscow. Without European participation, watch this video.
Good evening. I want to thank President Macron for convening us this evening. At stake is not just the future of Ukraine, it is an existential question for Europe as a whole, and therefore vital for Britain's national interest. This is a once-in-a-generation moment for the collective security of our continent. Only a lasting peace in Ukraine that safeguards its sovereignty will deter Putin from further aggression in the future. Now, recent statements by the US administration should not come as a surprise. President Trump has long expressed the wish for Europe to step up and meet the demands of its own security, that he wants to get a lasting peace agreement to end the war in Ukraine. So today's informal meeting of European leaders was a vital first step in responding to that challenge. On defence, it's clear the US is not going to leave NATO. But we Europeans will have to do more. The issue of burden sharing is not new, but it is now pressing. And Europeans will have to step up, both in terms of spending and the capabilities that we provide. On Ukraine, we're at the very early stage of the process. Europe must play its role. And I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground, alongside others, if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop, because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again. So I will go to Washington next week to meet President Trump and to discuss what we see as the key elements of a lasting peace. I spoke to President Zelensky on Friday and will do so again in coming days. And we envisage a further meeting with European colleagues when I return from the US. In this moment, we have to recognise the new era that we are in, not cling hopelessly to the comforts of the past. It's time for us to take responsibility for our security, for our continent. And I've been clear today, Britain will take a leading responsibility, as we always have, because Ukraine must have a secure future, Europe must have a secure future, Britain must have a secure future, and democratic values must prevail. Thank you.
Keir Starmer pressures Trump for backstop in Ukraine peacekeeping plan amid transatlantic tensions and a rapidly shifting diplomatic landscape. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has called on the United States to provide a backstop for any European-led peacekeeping force deployed in Ukraine, arguing that only a firm U.S. security guarantee can deter future Russian aggression. Starmer made the demand following an emergency summit in Paris, where European leaders and NATO chiefs convened to discuss a potential Ukraine peace deal. The high-stakes meeting was precipitated by a bombshell revelation that Washington had initiated bilateral negotiations with Moscow and Saudi Arabia, without consulting European allies or Kiev. The future of Ukraine is an existential issue for Europe, Starmer declared, insisting that the continent must take greater responsibility for its own security. he expressed willingness to commit British troops to a European peacekeeping force, but only if the US pledged a deterrent role. Yet the Prime Minister's ambitious proposal risks hitting a diplomatic brick wall, with Germany signaling reluctance and Poland outright rejecting the idea of committing troops. France, a likely supporter of Starmer's vision, faces an uphill battle rallying broader European consensus, while Italy and Norway remain non-committal. Starmer's diplomatic maneuvering in Paris underscores deepening European frustration over Washington's unilateral approach. The meeting, hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron, brought together leaders from Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Denmark, alongside NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. A senior European diplomat acknowledged the stakes. The whole discussion is moot without both Germany and Poland's participation. The geopolitical cracks widened further when Spain's Foreign Minister José Manuel Albares dismissed the prospect of troop deployments, stating, "Nobody is currently considering sending troops to Ukraine. Firstly, because peace is still very far away, and for one reason only, Vladimir Putin." Poland, which currently spends a NATO-leading 4.7% of GDP on defense, has ruled itself out of any peacekeeping mission, citing its primary focus on protecting the alliance's eastern flank. Hungary and Slovakia, both with strong ties to the Kremlin, are also unlikely to sign on. With European unity in question, Starmer's next move will be in Washington, where he is set to meet Donald Trump in an attempt to bridge the transatlantic divide. The meeting comes amid mounting European concerns that a second Trump presidency could see the US scale back its commitments to NATO, leaving Europe exposed. However, the UK's own defense posture remains under scrutiny. Starmer has committed to increasing defense spending to 2.5% of GDP, falling well short of Trump's call for 5% and Rutte's suggestion of exceeding 3%. The UK currently spends around 2.3% of GDP on defense, and recent YouGov polling suggests the British public is wary of tax hikes to fund further increases. Meanwhile, back in London, calls for parliamentary oversight on any troop deployment are growing. Both Labour and opposition MPs have demanded a Commons vote before British forces are sent to Ukraine. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey insisted, in principle, there should be a vote in Parliament when troops are deployed. Yet the proposal is already facing backlash from the populist right. Zia Yusuf, chairman of Reform, took a swipe at Starmer's strategy, saying, "Has anyone else noticed that political leaders start to get really keen to send other people's children to war zones after their domestic poll ratings collapse?" As Europe scrambles to respond to Washington's shifting stance and Russia's next move, the question remains: can Starmer turn his high-risk gamble into a credible European-led strategy, or will his push for a US backstop fall on deaf ears in a fractured alliance? Donald Trump's ex-security advisor slams Keir Starmer's Chagos handover. Keir Starmer's proposed deal to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius has been denounced as a travesty by former U.S. National Security Advisor Herbert Raymond McMaster, who warns it would weaken the UK and US's strategic position in the Indo-Pacific at a time of increasing geopolitical competition with China. A new report from the influential Policy Exchange think tank challenges the government's justification for the handover, arguing that the deal is not necessary to secure YIKES, U.S. military satellite communications at Diego Garcia. The report, backed by former Tory Security Minister Tom Tugendhat, dismantles the government's rationale, dismissing both its strategic and legal arguments as baseless. It is past time for the government to come to its senses, to remember its duty to defend the UK's vital strategic interests, and to walk away from the deal, Tugendhat wrote in the foreword to the report. As security minister in the previous government, Tugendhat objected to negotiations with Mauritius and has reiterated his opposition, describing the talks as a mistake and praising Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron for halting them. Earlier this month, a spokesperson for Starmer claimed that the deal was crucial for maintaining access to the electromagnetic spectrum at Diego Garcia, which enables secure UK military communication. However, Policy Exchange's findings challenge this assertion, revealing that the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, lacks any enforcement mechanism to terminate Britain's satellite operations on the islands. The report warns that any attempt by Mauritius to leverage the ITU against Britain's presence on the islands would be an act of hostility, warranting countermeasures by both the UK and the US, Tugendhat underscored this point, stating, "The main threat to the future of our military base in the Indian Ocean is not some unilateral punitive action of an international body. It is simply the government's distorted interpretation of the UK's legal obligations and its willingness to surrender meekly to a Mauritian shakedown." Speaking at Policy Exchange, McMaster echoed these concerns, warning that surrendering sovereignty over the Chagos Islands would significantly weaken Western strategic positioning. "I remember working with on this in 2017-2018, and remember coming to the conclusion that this would be a travesty," he said. "It would put us at a significant strategic disadvantage, especially at a time when China is trying to gain control of critical terrain and choke points around the world to create new spheres of influence," McMaster added. "It's just a really bad idea to give up sovereignty to organizations that can be subverted and turned against their purpose." As diplomatic tensions mount over the fate of the Chagos Islands, Starmer faces growing pressure from security hawks and transatlantic allies to reconsider his government's approach. With both strategic and political stakes rising, the Prime Minister's next move could have lasting implications for Britain's role on the world stage. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with our latest videos and stay ahead of the curve on the issues shaping our world. For even more, join our free Telegram group. Link in the description for uncensored, no-holds-barred discussions on the topics that matter most. Be part of the conversation. Your voice counts.